Yeah, we never thought that the brain had its own cleansing mechanism. And we all know that the body has that mechanism. It's called the lymphatic system. But it was only probably 6 or 7 years ago that a remarkable scientist, Macon Nedergaard at the University of Rochester, made a stunning set of discoveries in mice. What she found was that the brain actually does have its own cleansing system. It's called the glymphatic system, named after the glial cells in the brain that make it up. Now, if that wasn't remarkable enough, she went on to find 2 additional discoveries. The first is that that sewage system is not always switched on in high flow volume across the 24-hour period. It's specifically during deep sleep when that cleansing mechanism kicks into high gear. And as you said, these brain cells will actually shrink, and allowing the cerebrospinal fluid to wash away all of the metabolic detritus that's been building up whilst we're awake. Because make no mistake about it, from a biochemical perspective, wakefulness is low-level brain damage and sleep is sanitary salvation. And the third thing that she discovered, which is something you mentioned there, one of the pieces of toxic metabolic protein product that cleansing system was washing away was something called beta amyloid, which is what we know is a protein culprit in the cascade of Alzheimer's disease. And we've now done a lot of work, and others have done this work, showing that insufficient sleep may be one of the most significant lifestyle factors determining whether or not you will develop Alzheimer's disease in later life. Why deep sleep in particular? Because it's only that time period where we get these huge, powerful, deep brain waves, and we get this shrinking of the cells, and we get, therefore, the flow of this pulsing glymphatic system. So in other words, it's almost like a power cleanse for your brain. You know, it's good night, sleep clean, as it were, in that regard. The reason that people typically wake up in the middle of the night and can't get back to sleep, not always, but often, is because they have this sort of stress relief. They're carrying this anxiety. And anxiety, biologically, is the principal mechanism that we think underlies most insomnia. And what happens in part is that the fight or flight branch of the nervous system becomes overactive. The reason is because after about 16 hours of wakefulness, you've built up a lot of that healthy sleepiness, what we call sleep pressure. And the longer that you're awake, the more of that sleep pressure builds up. And it's a chemical that builds up in the brain called adenosine. And then when we go into sleep, it's the time when the brain can actually start to clear out that adenosine. And so it starts to lower the sleep pressure. And after about 8 hours of sleep, you've cleared away 16 hours of that adenosine, of that sleepiness. And so you wake up naturally and you feel refreshed and restored. But what will happen is that you can be stressed and or excited, but the sleepiness, the weight of sleepiness pulling you down is so heavy at that point that you can get to sleep. But then 3 or 4 hours later, you've jettisoned maybe 50% of all of that adenosine, maybe even more, because it principally happens during deep sleep. And so now your brain is much more vulnerable to those awakenings because it doesn't have the weight of that sleepiness. Does that make some sense? Don't go to work. Don't start checking emails. Don't eat because it trains the brain to expect food. But instead, in a dim room, somewhere different, so you change the context, so you're changing the learned association. Just read a book, listen to an audiobook, meditate in dim light. All of these things are great. Find out whatever works for you. And then only when you're sleepy do you return to bed. And there's no time limit for that. And that way you train the brain back out of a bad association that it's learned, which is my bed is this place of being awake, which if you repeat that over time, you become trained to be awake in the bed. And then you will relearn the association that your bed is the place where you're asleep.